Once upon a time, there lived a king and a queen who had 3 daughters, 2 of them beautiful, but the third, the youngest, so beautiful that people worshipped her as a goddess and neglected the worship of Venus for her sake. Therefore, although her sisters were married to kings, Psyche, the youngest, had no suitors. Because of her beauty and supposed divinity, no man dared aspire to her hand. Her father consulted the oracle of Apollo about her marriage, and was told that she was not to marry a human. Rather, she was to be exposed on a mountain where a dire serpent would take her as his bride. With great sorrow and funeral rites, Psyche was abandoned on the mountain. Venus, jealous of Psyche's beauty and of the honor given to her, had a different fate in mind for her. She ordered her son Cupid to use his magic arrows to cause the girl to fall in love with the most deformed and ignoble man he could find. Cupid set off to do so, but, upon seeing Psyche, fell in love with her himself. When she was left on the mountain, therefore, he had the west wind carry her to his palace. Invisible servants welcomed her, bathed her, sang to her, and brought her a sumptuous banquet. That night Cupid came to her and made her his wife, but left before daybreak, having forbidden her to see his face. After some days, Psyche longed to see her sisters, and begged that they might visit her. The god consented reluctantly, warning her of possible consequences, and had the west wind waft them to the palace. Psyche entertained them with baths, music, and divine delicacies. When they inquired about her husband, Psyche said that he was a handsome young man who spent most of his time in the hills hunting. She loaded their arms with jewels and treasures as they left, and urged them to return. Although to Psyche they expressed delight at her good fortune, inwardly they were consumed with envy, for Psyche's palace, wealth, and spouse were superior to their own. They conspired to destroy her happiness, and found the means upon their next visit, for the simple Psyche, now pregnant and forewarned that her sisters intended her harm, forgot her earlier story and said that her husband was a middle-aged merchant with gray hair. Realizing that Psyche had not seen her husband, and suspecting that she was married to a god, the sisters returned the next day and persuaded Psyche that her mysterious husband must actually be a monstrous serpent, who devoured pregnant women. They instructed her to hide a lamp and a sharp knife in the room, and, when her husband was sleeping, to take out the lamp by its light to cut off his head. All this the gullible Psyche, terribly frightened by the words, promised to do. That night she brought out the lamp and saw not a monster, but Cupid, the sweetest and most beautiful of the gods. She gazed on him with insatiable love, until a drop of hot oil from her lamp fell on his shoulder and woke him. He, injured by the burning oil and wounded by her lack of faith, rebuked her and vanished from her sight. Psyche, wretched and desolate, first attempted to drown herself, but the river would not let her drown, and the god Pan warned her never to try again. Psyche wandered on and came to the city where one of her sisters lived. She told her sister that her husband was Cupid, and he had turned her out for her disobedience, and that he said he would marry the sister instead. At this, the sister hastened to the mountain and flung herself over the cliff from which she had been wafted down before, but the west wind did not aid her this time, and she was dashed to pieces on the rocks. After doing the same to her other sister, Psyche traveled about the country seeking her husband. She was refused shelter by the goddess Ceres and Juno because of Venus's anger toward her. In despair, Psyche finally decided to seek out Venus, hoping to be reconciled to her. Venus, however, beat her, had sorrow and sadness torment her, and set her on a series of seemingly impossible tasks. The first, of separating a great heap of wheat, barley, poppy seed, peas, lentils, and beans into separate piles, was carried out for her by a host of sympathetic ants. Next she had to get a handful of golden wool from some man-killing sheep. A reed by the river whispered to her that this could be achieved by plucking the wool off the briars amongst which the sheep had been grazing. Then she had to fetch a cupful of water from a fountain fed by the river Styx, at the top of a sheer and slippery rock face guarded by dragons who never slept. But an eagle came to her, took the cup from her, filled it with water, and returned it to her. Finally, Psyche was sent to the world of the dead and told to bring back to Venus a box containing beauty from Persephone, queen of the underworld. A mysterious voice told her how to enter the underworld, make her way through it, and return. It warned her in particular that 3 times she would be asked for help by people who would all seem to deserve her pity, but she must refuse them all. And when Persephone gave her the box, she must, above all things, not open it to look inside. Psyche obeyed all this and returned to the upper world with the box, but curiosity overcame her, and she looked into it. It contained only an infernal and death-like sleep, which overcame her at once. Cupid, his injury now healed, and searching for Psyche, found her, put the sleep back into the box, woke her, and sent her on to Venus. He then interceded with Jupiter, who agreed to permit him to marry Psyche and make her a goddess. Venus, no longer having reason to be jealous of Psyche, was reconciled to her, and thus Psyche was married to Cupid, and after in due time she was delivered of a child, whom we call Pleasure.